Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. As we go into this holiday season, I just simply wanted to say thank you so much for spending time with me and liking our podcast and sending us reviews and sending us heartfelt emails. I really, truly appreciate it. Thank you very, very much for being a part of our community. Know that as we go into these very stressful, challenging holiday times, that you are not alone, that there are many people just trying to survive this time. So for today's show, I'm excited to let you know that Carrie Cariello joins us. Her 19-year-old son, Jack, has autism, and Carrie shares their journey as a family from Jack's diagnosis process to bringing home another baby, how Carrie and her husband had to find balance within their relationship and their individual relationships with Jack. She gives some examples of when online dating goes pretty wrong, and how important having checklists and toolkits are as our children grow from our little ones into adults. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. I hope you enjoy this episode, and as always, let me know what you think. I am with Carrie Cariello today. She is the author of What Color is Monday? How Autism Changed One Family for the Better. Someone I'm With Has Autism, and her latest book, Half My Sky. She lives in southern New Hampshire with her husband, Joe, and their 5 children. Carrie is a regular contributor to the Huffington Post, Today Parents, The Today Show, Parents.com, Love What Matters, and Grown and Flown. She has been interviewed by NBC Nightly News and has a TEDx talk. Yay! So fun. Carrie speaks regularly about autism, marriage, and motherhood, and writes a weekly blog at www.carriecariello.com. One of her essays, I Know What Causes Autism, was featured as one of the Huffington Post Best of 2015. And her piece, I Know Why He Has Autism, was named one of the top blog posts of 2017 by the Today Show. Holy whoa, Carrie, I'm so glad to have you here and have you share your story. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. What a pleasure. I'm very excited.
Well, it's crazy what you've been doing to increase the awareness of autism and the beautiful blog post that you put together. I was telling you before we started recording, just we're very honest here, but your blog posts are genuine and raw, and I almost cried reading some of them just because it's you just pouring your soul out onto the paper. Let's chat a little bit about your crazy 5 children, where Jack is in that lineup, and just tell us a little bit about your life right now.
Yeah, so I'm married to a man named Joe. Joe's a dentist. His license plate reads painless because dentists are very funny people.
Oh, goodness, he's a dentist. Oh, and by the way, did you choose him specifically for his last name, or is that your maiden name?
That is a great story to tell. I had my first date with Joe. We were in college. We worked together at a place called Pizzeria Uno's in a mall. And he asked me to come over. He was going to cook dinner. And we were in this restaurant business together. You don't always really know each other's last names, right? They're sort of fluid. So I went to his house and he made chicken stir fry. And I said, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. And he said, oh, I'm Joe Cariello. And I said, well, I could never marry you because I would be Carrie Cariello. And sitting here right now, we've been married for 25 years. So
I love that story. Carrie Cariello. I mean, that's amazing.
It is a once in a lifetime chance to create a name for yourself. I will say that. I spell it 100 times a day, but that's okay. So we have 5 kids together. My oldest son, Joseph, is 20. Jack, my second oldest, is diagnosed with autism. He is 19. My middle son, Charlie's 18. The only girl, my daughter, Rose, is 16. And then my youngest son is 15, Henry. And the story in our house is we expected our daughter to be the last, but then a doctor who was supposed to make sure that was the case canceled. And then I had a 10-pound, 4-ounce baby boy.
Holy whoa.
I like to tell people I have created 45 pounds worth of people. That's how many people.
That's
I mean,
funny.
big kids.
You do, considering Teal was 2 pounds, 1 ounce. I have no idea what it's like to have a 10-pound baby.
Oh, they're massive.
Oh my goodness. Actually, when a 4-pounder would come wheeling into the NICU, I would go up to them and be like, please don't eat my baby. So I can't even imagine what I would say to a 10-pounder.
Oh, he came out like he didn't fit really in the 3-month clothes, the 0 to 3 month clothes. They're not made for
Right.
that.
No. Oh my gosh,
It was
that's
an event.
hilarious. Yeah,
It
it
was an event.
was. But he was obviously welcomed with open arms.
Very much so. I mean, I can't even imagine life any differently. So,
Yeah. 19 years ago, you had Jack.
yes.
Talk to me about the process between like what you noticed, the differences between your eldest, Joseph. So you've got Joseph and then you have Jack. And talk to me about that process of when you kind of realized, this baby's a little different than my last experience.
Yeah, so my first two are 13 months apart. And in retrospect, that was very helpful to me because I knew I had a calendar year to work with, basically. Like, okay, well, last Easter, Joey was such and such years old and or months old, and he was, some of my red flags were the playful aspect of it. Jack did not have any playfulness to him. He never wanted to do the itsy bitsy spider or put his little feet in our shoes and kind of shuffle around or patty cake. And my oldest did all of that. My oldest was developmentally accurate for the most part. All my kids walked late, but otherwise, socially and engaging wise, that he was right on target. Um, for Jack, it was almost this eerie disconnect. He seemed to really not know who we were in his world. I had my third son when Jack was almost 14 months old. And I was I was having him in the hospital. And when I came home, it was as if Jack didn't even know who I was. He walked right past me as if I was a lamp. So there were some really like crystal moments that they're core memories for me now, right? Because there's a strong sensation linked to them. He slept very well early on and then completely gave up sleeping altogether around 4 months. So we just sort of had all these red flags piling up. But, it is going on 19 years ago. And autism simply wasn't a part of the mainstream narrative the way it is now. So we were on waiting list after waiting list just to have him looked at. It even took some convincing to get what's called early intervention because they just didn't feel strongly enough about any one of these symptoms to move us into the system. And then finally, he was a great big kid. Jack was 9 pounds, 3 ounces at birth. He was a hungry kid. Our pediatrician at the time, I know it's very different now. Our pediatrician had us starting baby food at 4 months. And Jack couldn't manage food. He couldn't figure out how to get food from the front of his mouth to the back of his mouth. And he was enraged by that. That was our ticket into the early intervention system. That was when the pediatrician said, I think it's time that we have him evaluated.
So was that around 4 months or did that also take a little bit longer? Because I know getting a diagnosis, labels I'm not a huge fan of, but at the same time, it's really important to have a label when it comes to the medical community, the school system, early intervention, et cetera.
100%. No, I would say, well, now I have to dig into the memory vault. I would say that was at least he was 8 months old before we started to make phone calls and appointments. And then those were 6 to 8 weeks out at least. And my husband and I laugh about this. We thought this will be over in 6 to 8 weeks. He'll be better by then. We were so naive. And I do think naivete is your best friend because if I knew what I was about to embark on,
Yeah.
I don't know what would have happened.
I know. I know. Like we don't get a handbook and we certainly don't get like an extra badge that says, "Oh, hey, we chose you because you're prepared. You're completely prepared to handle this child." I think other parents who see us are like, "Oh, well, you have Teal because you were prepared for." I'm all,
No. There's no rhyme or reason to that. I mean, and there's the saying, God gives special kids. And I think, well, that's nice,
people.
but
Yeah.
I don't know, we rise to the occasion, but everybody would. That's what I tell people. Everybody would rise to this occasion because you have no choice.
You have no choice. You can't just stuff the child back up the vagina.
No.
You
At
can't
nine
be like, well,
pounds,
yeah,
I
and
wouldn't.
definitely no, you wouldn't want to. And especially at 8 months, I'm sure he was like a tank at like,
Oh God. Yes.
sorry about the vagina comment. I mean, I'm very honest. So now you've got the diagnosis and you're realizing, all right, this is different. I love it that you're still having children because wow. I mean, that's healthy. That means your relationship was actually okay because there's a huge strain on a marriage when you have a child with any type of extra special need. Talk to me about the effect on the family as you started learning more about Jack and introducing more children, et cetera. I mean, you said he didn't even really, he treated you like a lamp when you came home with the third child. So I'd imagine it's been a tricky road.
Well, and also to circle back, I mean, the decision to have children was really kind of loose. Like Jack was diagnosed in November, I remember clearly, and he was 18 months old. The next day, I found out I was pregnant with my fourth child, my daughter. So really, there wasn't a lot of planning going on because people do ask me a lot, like, how did you make the decision to go on with more children? Because maybe you had a moment and thought, can I handle more than this? Or what else might come out the pipeline? And I really didn't have to reflect on that a whole lot because they just sort of came, you know.
Yeah. You do
You
know how you
know,
get them, right? You do know how you get
I
them.
know.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody
Good.
asks that. And so we learned. My husband wanted a sixth. He wanted one more. And Henry was so big and his delivery was fine, but it was an event. And I said, I really think I'm done. And I do want to address marriage because I talk a lot about that. I talk about that in my new book. I'm very open about the journey it's been for Joe and I. It's certainly magnified. Having a special needs child magnifies every crack in your foundation already, every flaw. We had many years that were fraught with sort of this. I often say a father's grief is quiet. It's an after hours affair. It's on the couch when everybody else has gone up to bed. A mother's grief is loud. It fills the room. It's colorful. It demands attention. Just that difference between us alone caused quite a bit of rift because we came at autism very, very differently. I often say MOM, mom, stands for manager of moods. I, for years upon years, managed everybody's moods in the house. Daddy's had a bad day. Okay, this one is upset. What is the problem here? Not only did it sort of take a toll on me emotionally, it also stood in the way of Jack and Joe kind of forming this really beautiful, messy relationship together. Kids like Jack only know how to match the highest nervous system in the room. I am married to a great big Italian man who runs at a 12. He runs very high. For years, I tried to balance the two of them and explain one to the other. And there was a really poignant moment at a middle school concert. We were sitting there. We were going to go out to dinner after for my oldest son's 16th birthday. So Jack was 15. We were at this concert. Jack was very agitated, didn't want to sit through it. And Joe was determined he was going to sit through it. And Jack stood up in the middle of everything and yelled the biggest swear word he could think of. And Joe got right up and steered him out the door so fast that like a metal folding chair clattered to the floor. And this is why people on stage like singing and dancing and having their middle school moment of, talent. And my inclination was to get up and follow them to the car and to sort of start easing everybody. And okay, it's like, well, he didn't mean it. Oh, Jack, you shouldn't do that to daddy, and sort of play this middleman. And it was a decision on my part to say, I am sitting here and they are going to figure it out. It was one of my hardest moments. And I got out there. It still sort of makes me emotional. The memory is so vivid. It was a March evening, and March in New Hampshire is cold and raw and damp, and it was like sort of spitting this rain, like the sky was spitting rain. And Joe and Jack were swaying together underneath sort of this, like lamp, this overhead light in the parking lot, and just holding on to one another. And it was like they needed to find each other without me. That was a big turning point in how I interacted with both of them.
What a gift that was for both of them.
Mhm.
No one can see me, but I'm totally tearing up. What a gift, Carrie, that you had the wherewithal to say, no, mom's got to sit here for my other kids and enjoy.
Yes.
And I got to let them manage their own relationship.
Yes, exactly. And it's not a perfect relationship, but neither is mine with Jack. And in so many ways, Joe draws out different gifts of Jack that I don't. That's not to say it doesn't show up for us over and over again. You know, my youngest son right now is working, and the job's a little tough for him. He's 14, almost 15, and the owner's very hard on him, and he's always worried he's going to get fired. And I think a 14-year-old shouldn't have to worry about that. And Joe's take is it's a great lesson to learn how to be in the world. It's time to figure other people out, you know, this and that. I mean, we just sort of had a moment about it. But I will say our moments are softer. We had much more jagged edges early on. Now I realize we can have a moment. We're not going to come at this the same way. And perhaps we'll find a middle ground.
I'm taking notes.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
Well, it is hard. It's hard enough, one, having a healthy marriage. Let's be honest. I mean, come on. Just the statistics are the statistics.
Yes.
Then, whether you believe them or not, I remember in the NICU, I think someone said, oh, yeah, just be aware. Divorce rates for parents with special needs children is like 80%. And I wanted to be like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
You don't tell someone that.
No.
Right. So then you've got that, whether or not that's controversial, whether or not you believe that stat or whatever. But anywho, it does create more of a strain. And I just think it's shocking to me how we don't talk about the strain on that relationship. And yet I know that my daughter has significantly enhanced the love and understanding and compassion that we have as a family for one another. But then also, even when Alex or I see someone else who is just struggling, like my heart opens up now. It doesn't have to be a special needs child, but my daughter created that. And that's part of the magic, right? My
Yes.
daughter helps me see with different eyes. I see
Mm.
with a different heart. I listen more with my heart than I ever did before she was here. And that's magical.
That
It's
is the beautiful gift.
it is. So we're going to talk about the mess because I read one of the most popular posts that you have about, did I tell you that he has autism? And then you've got how you knew, and like you've got so many different amazing blog posts, but you do talk about how messy it is. But before we go there, let's talk about some of the magic that Jack has brought into your world.
So I always say Jack gave us an opportunity to redefine our family and build it the way we wanted to build it in a culture that shifts parents that focus a lot, creates a lot of distractions. Jack, he needed us all at home at night for dinner. It brought us back to the dinner table. Talk about that a lot. Jack couldn't sit through, hockey tournaments or soccer tournaments or all of that. He wasn't able. So we sort of whittled down. Everybody got to do something they enjoy, but it made us look at things through much more discerning eyes. Does this add value to us as a family, or is this a distraction? It forced Joe and I to really consider the pillars of our family that were important to Joe. Making the sacraments at the Catholic Church was important to him. So we went to the, not extremes, but it took some effort to get Jack through those, but that was important. To Jack himself, the meal at night was important. So we made it a point. Everybody was home for dinner probably 4 to 5 times a week. I tried over the years to just look at it as this opportunity to recreate both myself as a mother and who I wanted my family to be.
I love that you found out what works for him. So many times we just the huff and the puff and going, like slowing down. Like I know that one of Teal's favorite times of day is when she just gets to lay and listen to my heartbeat.
Yes.
I know that she hasn't had that for the last 4 days. My mom's in town. We've been going. It's Christmas. There's the Nutcracker. I mean, there's so much going on. This and play dates and which by the way, I'm really happy about because I never ever thought that Tia would get invited to play dates. And so
Mm,
that's a big difference of what I am happy about, right? That we are getting a little bit more into that. It's okay for me to have another mom hang out with
mm,
Teal, but she hasn't had the time to listen to my heartbeat.
mm.
And that is really important to her. Just and she's the I only have one, Carrie. So she's the only person that knows what my heartbeat sounds like from the inside.
That's incredible.
And she needs that. And I think everyone that's listening, if you can just find that one thing, right? That one thing, whether it's dinner or listening to the heartbeat or being pushed on a swing. I have a friend with a son with autism, and every day he just needs to be outside and pushed on a swing. And she laughs because she's like, yep, I'm, the mom pushing my 17-year-old on a swing, but that's what we do. Kristen,
Yeah.
that's a shout out to you. And it's so important. And then it's also what I think is hugely valuable. And I'm still learning this, Carrie. I'd love to know what you do, what's important for you, because it's not just managing moods. It's not just managing schedules. It's not, you have to also feed your soul. So
Yes.
what's important for you?
Well, I've always been somebody who does best when I carve out a little bit of time for myself. I run just about every day. I've done that for years. I've always incorporated some kind of physical yoga for the longest time, running, and then reading and writing really light me up. And at the same time, I tend to not immerse myself in a lot of the entertainment or like shows and books around autism. And I know there's some really beautiful ones out there. Love on the Spectrum. People love The Good Doctor. They've asked me if I watched it. I want to be able to put it aside and not constantly be immersed in it.
I was just gonna
So
say,
that's a
like,
choice.
I am the movie. I don't need to go watch
Yes,
a movie.
yes. And I appreciate that mainstream media is beginning to incorporate different stories over and over. Doesn't mean I don't support it. I just don't like that's not where I choose to unwind.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So keeping ourselves emotionally safe that way, I think is really, really important. It'd be so easy, and I have had moments earlier on when I did it to slide into that rabbit hole of the internet and other people's stories and like all these different approaches and gluten free and all of this. And I think you have to return to your core being and who you are and feel strong in that.
absolutely. Goodness. One thing that you've coined is the forever parent concept.
Mm.
Talk with me a little bit about what that is and what it means for you as you approach Jack's life.
Sure. Jack is actually in a residential program right now with a lot of scaffolding and support, and he takes classes at a local college. So he's made tremendous, tremendous strides. People ask me a lot, will he ever live independently? And I think that just depends on how you define independently. I think his trajectory will look a little different, and we will always, to some degree, be involved in his life. When he turned 18, we had to do what's called obtain guardianship, which was a very emotional process. And it's very complicated. And not only from the practical side, but it's complicated in terms of what it means as a turning point. The 18th birthday is often like, you get a new car, we have a party. It's a very big celebration. And we spent the morning of Jack's in a courtroom with each of us with a court appointed attorney. That moment is again that core memory is sort of crystallized for me that we will always manage to some degree his day-to-day affairs. So we are, Joe is a forever father and I'm a forever mother. And when you first have your children, you're always going to be somewhat. You'll be a sounding board when they have a newborn. Maybe there'll be a divorce and you have to sort of step in and with an extra layer of support. Jack at this point is unable to handle financial affairs on his own. He's very easily persuaded. He's very susceptible to advertisements, to political campaigns, even at 19. We have to safeguard him. He is slowly beginning to manage the medical side of his world, which is beautiful. He manages his own medication. He handles refills, but there is still some oversight that I have to contribute. Watch for side effects of medication. Make sure the doctor understands, what the impact is on him. I often say there's a duality when it comes to kids like Jack. There is his physical age, 19, and then there's his emotional spirit. I would put Jack's closer to 12 or 13. What I'm learning recently as we begin to evolve into this new season of a young adult with autism, we have to parent both. Both exist equally inside of him. Particularly as we move forward and he's interested in having a relationship, and he talked about online dating, and our first reaction was absolutely not. No, 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 you're not ready. That's crazy. You're not ready for that. And it turns out that was a mistake because Jack went and did it anyway. So he connected with who he thought was a peer online, and they suggested he meet. And when he got there, it was two men. And they convinced him, this was last spring, to get into their car and to take money out with his ATM card. So it was a really, really low point in our journey. He was unharmed. You know, Jack is at least 6'5". I think he might be taller. He, they wound up he couldn't use, the debit card didn't work. So they wound up just bringing him back to the meeting spot and leaving him there. But it revealed so many vulnerabilities in our own parenting strategies that we chose to focus on as opportunities. One is, and I'm really passionate about bringing this information we learned to other people. One is, when kids connect online, they no longer think it's a stranger. To them, that is a friend, a buddy, somebody they are now letting into their universe. Two, because of Jack and who he was all these years, he was always in the company of adults. We never gave him a way out the way you do with your other children. You know, our other kids, we'd say, if you go to a party and people are acting crazy, you text me pickle. No questions asked. You're around this teacher and he or she's giving you a weird vibe. Well, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
And we did the opposite for Jack because he agreed to so few social obligations or social commitments that once we'd say, well, no, you're going. You said you were going and there's no way out. You said you'd go to that party and now you're going to go. You said you'd play adaptive soccer. We're going to see the season through. So I think we almost pushed him to, I can't say no to this. When we deconstructed the whole thing, he did say, when I got there, it didn't feel right.
Good.
So we came up with a checklist of, I have to call my father. I have a stomach ache, a very, very concrete. He wrote it all down. And then third, another checklist of what to do. Okay, you want to meet somebody that you've only known online. What has to happen? You tell at least 3 people. You meet in a public place. Your phone has to be at 85% or higher.
You don't get in a car.
Don't ever get in a car. And no one should ever ask you for anything on a date or a first meeting. Money, sexual favors, anything the first time that you're meeting.
Carrie, I'm so glad you're sharing this. I mean, I have a 7-year-old and yet who's nonverbal, verbalish. We like to call her verbalish. I need to start these conversations. I mean, we do have conversations. Like, for example, yesterday, my mom was going to put her down because we still cuddle before we go to bed. And Teal was just like, no, I really don't want you to. And my mom's been on the show before and she listens. And so Grandma Di said, yeah, but I'd really like to lay down with you. And she kind of sat down and like laid down with her. And I didn't say anything at that moment. And Teal kind of pushed her away after I had left. So my mom came down afterwards. And I said, how'd that go? And she's like, she really didn't want me to be with her. And I said, the one thing we have to all be aware of is what we're teaching her. If that was an older man and he said, but I really want to lay down next to you. And we didn't listen to her. Mm-hmm. And my mom, she's like, yuck. And that's the first thing that she said. She's like, yuck. And I said, but that's what we have to start teaching her. And man, did your stomach just drop? Oh. I mean, my stomach dropped and it's not even my child.
It was so he called Joe. It was like midnight on a Sunday night. And this is another sort of dimension that we needed to cover. He called Joe. He was absolutely out of his mind, hysterical, out of his mind. he had the foresight to call up the police.
Good job, Jack.
Jack is kind of a righteous guy. Like he wants justice, right? He, by this point, had passed out of like shock and fear into anger.
Right.
But he was so hysterical on the phone that I was like, Jack, I'm thinking this police officer's, this is going to turn out badly. You know, here's this young man kind of out of control, screaming about slashing their tires, or I'm going to go after them, you know. And so Joe said, put the officer on the phone, please. And he said to the officer that this is my son and he has autism. And the officer said, I understood that already.
Oh, good.
So, you know, police departments are beginning some great training to understand the neurodiverse population. But it also gave us the chance later on, when everybody was calmer, to say, how do we behave when law enforcement is involved? That is not the way. Again, checklists and toolboxes are a great, great resource for somebody like Jack. You want to give them something they can refer to in times of deep stress. You know, we know that the skills we work the hardest for are the ones we first lose under stress. For Jack, that's language and regulation. It's the first thing to go out the door. So you have to give him quick sound bites he can retrieve really easily from his memory and deliver them or use them. Breathe. He rubs his hands together to calm his nervous system, you know, all these little sort of tools. But I thought, how grateful am I? I got another chance to teach him this stuff before it all could have ended badly on many fronts.
On many fronts. Wow. I love that. I love that view of it. Oh, yeah. And as you're sitting there, I'm like, yes, what goes out the window when I lose?
Exactly.
I'm seriously just like, man, and then taking it another level to this neurodiverse. I have a mom that calls her son neurospicy. Like, I love that.
Oh, I love that.
He's neurospicy, right? Like you're never quite sure what you're going to get. And that's a wonderful thing. Checkbox or checklists and toolboxes, just giving all of us, truthfully, like what goes out the window when I lose my patience? What goes out the window when I get stressed out? What goes out the window when I'm overly fatigued? I mean, I know what happens, but then what are my checklists? I'm taking notes.
Well, there's a great strategy that I use for myself. I believe it's used in sobriety. I'm not sober, but I read about it and it just really works for me. It's called the HALT method. Are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Those are the 4 things you ask yourself when you feel your nervous system escalating. Then you just go back and address whatever sort of your low-hanging fruit, whatever's the easiest in that moment, you know. I find that incredibly helpful. And I think I practice yoga. I know we're not on camera, but there's the most comfortable position a human being can be in is if you take your hand and you put it right underneath your clavicle. And if you want to, you can place your other one on your stomach. A lot of people don't like to touch their stomach, but at least this one hand on your clavicle, it instantly covers the vagal nerve and soothes your nervous system. So the body tells us everything that we need to know. If you listen to your body, you have a chance to kind of self-correct and sort of, you know, choose your internal state.
You calmed me down. I've got my hand on my chest. I'm like, ooh, yay.
Doesn't it feel nice?
It feels so nice. I want everyone, if you don't need to drive with 2 hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even just 2 over your, you know, like 2 of them at the same time. You're right. So many people do. I had to really get over touching my belly. I'm like, okay, it's all good. It's all good. Okay. So let's talk about Half My Sky.
Thank you. Yes, I'm so excited about this book. I brought it to show, but we're not on video. But I know you'll have the link.
We'll put the link on there, and it's a beautiful cover.
Thank you. It is a beautiful cover. I was talking to 2 other dear collaborators, Kate from Finding Cooper's Voice and Adrienne from
Kate's been on the show.
Yeah. Has she been? I thought so. Tales of an Educated Debutante. And I was like, what cover? What cover? And we said, oh, photo covers are really coming back. And I said, I have this photo of Jack in Italy walking away from us in the rain. And he's holding an umbrella above his head because we had said, Jack, hold the umbrella. and so literal. His arms are extended, he's holding it straight up over his head. And Kate said, I remember that photo. She'd seen it. So it just
Yeah.
seemed like one that had impact on people. So the backstory of this book is it was originally supposed to be published by my current publisher. And I started to write it in chapters. And I said, this isn't working. I just want to write letters. That's what feels right to me. I want to write this in the form of letters. And I wrote the whole thing. And my editor, who was lovely, she said, I absolutely love this book, but it's not what you promised us. You promised us a guidebook, like a how to. How did you sit at the dinner table? How do you regulate yourself? And so she started to come up with ways that we could tweak it. And I, every time she did, it was like nails on a chalkboard. I said, I can't, this is my most personal work yet. I simply can't add instructions at the end of each chapter or dear reader, dear Jen, what did you get out of that? And I said, but I'll write you the guidebook and I'll just keep this one for myself. And like, I don't know what will come of it. We'll see. And I am writing the guidebook right now, which has been interesting as a way to stretch myself as a writer because it's not my go-to format. It's very prosaic, practical. But I said, I'm going to publish this. And it sold almost 9,000 copies in pre-sale, in 1 month's worth of pre-sale. And people are just seeing a part of themselves inside this story. It's a series of letters to everyone in my universe. At the center of it is marriage. And so the title is named after marriage. I often say Joe holds up half my sky. And in a way, it's sort of a legacy. If something happened to me tomorrow, everybody in the world will know how I felt. And I think I'm very pleased with it. I'm very excited to see how the world interprets it.
I'm excited to get my hands on it.
Mm.
Yeah, I apologize. I haven't read it yet.
Oh, not at all. Please. It just
Well,
came out a full release December 1st. And when you self-publish, I used a program called Ingram Spark, and my representative there said, we weren't prepared. Like self-published pre-orders don't, I wasn't prepared. I promise you, if I sold 300 copies, I was going to call that a big win. So,
wow. Congratulations.
thank you.
You've also written quite a bit about autism and your blog posts. I know what causes autism and I know why he has autism. Will you just give us a snippet into those two? Because those are huge titles.
They are huge titles. They're the works that put me somewhat on, if you could say I'm on the map at
On the
all.
map. Yeah, for
Those are
sure.
the ones that put me there. So I wrote, I Know What Causes Autism after an article floated into my hemisphere about listing all the possible things we could blame. Strawberries. I mean, truly, these they were on the list. Circumcision, Windex, aluminum. I blog every Monday. I have blogged every Monday for 11 years. And so through the week, I start to put the pieces together. I get an inspiration and then, I move about my world and some more things flow by. And so I was writing that piece and kind of trying to come up with an ending. And I was in a coffee shop. At the time, Jack was in 5th grade. And the woman in the coffee shop said, hey, my daughter Lily's in Jack's class. And I said, oh, that's good. And she said, some kids call him weird. And I said, yeah, I know that happens, right? And she said, but Lily said he's exactly who he's supposed to be. And so I remember driving home from the coffee shop and just sitting back down and thought, this is it. This is my home run ending to this piece. And so I introduced the concept as, I often say, if compassion is a house we build, then storytelling is the key to the front door. And that idea kind of originated in that essay because I invite the reader to picture just this sparkling glass house in the distance where kids like Jack are, in their element, and then etched upon the front door is he's exactly the way he's supposed to be. So it resonated widely with a much wider audience than my own.
Yeah.
I Know Why He Has Autism sort of challenges the notion that we have to get at the why at all, that the why doesn't really, really matter. And if you can set that aside, you can discover the other gifts, like we mentioned earlier, that the why might be. He might have it, so I'm forced to strengthen my marriage in ways I wouldn't have. He might have it, so I'm forced to acknowledge the world through a different lens. And that was a really neat concept to kind of explore.
I talk about they are here so that we evolve.
Yes.
They don't need to evolve. I believe that these children are coming in, and they're coming in on a more regular basis because they are evolutionarily higher than us. Teal is telepathic. She's a healer. She sees through people. I believe she sees different colors, which is why she has a hard time telling you that's green and that's blue. She rolled her eyes at me when she was 16 months old when we were going through colors. And my mother looked at me and she's like, did she just roll her eyes at you? And I was like, yeah, we're in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
But I believe she sees different colors. I believe she is evolutionarily beyond us. And I believe every single one of these children is here to do that for me. I am evolving every time I interact with her. I am becoming a different person. And I just love how you're so good with your words. It's so good. I can't wait to keep reading every Monday. I hope everybody does. I mean, your words are just beautiful. I mean, even when you just said about the spitting of the rain when he took your son out, and just like how descriptive you are. And it's such a beautiful thing. So I really encourage everyone to get your books, get onto your website, subscribe to your blog, and be a part of your community, because it's just a gorgeous space that you've created for everyone. Thank you so much. Yeah. Is there any other last tidbit that you'd like to share with us? Something that you're like, oh man, I wish she had asked me about this.
I think we've covered some great ground. I'm honored to be able to share that. The forever piece is very near and dear to my heart. And the essays, I'm grateful to. I haven't talked about those essays in a few years, so it's been a great chance.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. And I'd like to actually get my hands on some of your books, and then maybe we can have you come back and really look at some of the things that you're presenting and talk about that.
I would love that.
It'd be wonderful. Thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found one or two meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.